Hello everyone, it's the Hobby Dabbler. Today I'm going to be trying out a recipe for do-it-yourself gesso. And I found two different recipes online that look promising, but today we're going to make number one. And what you're going to need is cornstarch, baking soda, PVA glue, white paint, and some sort of distilled or filtered water. So in this bowl here, I have 3 teaspoons of cornstarch and 3 teaspoons of baking soda. And I'm just going to mix it together before I add any of my wet ingredients. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take your PVA glue and you're going to add 1 part glue. So if you're using a teaspoon, that would be 1 teaspoon of glue. I have this absolutely gigantic bottle of PVA glue, so I will do this as carefully as I can so I don't dump glue everywhere. Okay, so 1 teaspoon of glue. That should do it. And we'll add that in. And now it says add a couple squirts of white acrylic paint. So let's get my glue off of here first so we can mix it in. And a couple squirts of white acrylic paint. I'm just using a cheap brand. I think it's, I don't know, it's pretty old. If I can get any out of here. So you want, I think you want a fair amount of paint. Oh, this one is clogged. Let me get another white paint. So I think you want a fair amount of white paint. I'm not really sure how much I'm going to put in. This one's really runny. So, I don't know, a few squirts anyway. And now it says to mix up your glue and your paint together until it forms a kind of paste. Okay, now it says add 2 to 3 parts water. So I'm going to start by adding 2 teaspoons of water to it and see what the consistency looks like after that. I guess it depends on how runny you want your gesso to be. If you want it like a texture paste, you would make it really thick. But to me, I want it just as a priming sort of thing for my canvases and my art journal, so the paint will stick. So this is really quite thick. It says make it the consistency of pancake batter. I think this might be too thick, so I'm going to add just half a teaspoon of water. So I'm adding 2.5 teaspoons altogether of water. And I'll have the recipe down in the description for you. Okay. It's looking a little better, but still maybe a bit thick. I'm going to add another half a teaspoon. So that would be 3 whole teaspoons of water. It kind of reminds me of making oobleck with my kids. Okay, so that has more of a consistency of gesso to me. It's runny, but it's also not too runny. Okay, so let's see how this works. put my spoon down and grab a paintbrush. And I have this piece of cardboard here that I'm going to try to paint it onto. Okay, so it's still pretty thick. This is, to me, more of a texture paste than a gesso. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add 1 more teaspoon of water. Okay, it's a lot runnier now, so let's see how that does. Now it's very thick and pasty. I mean, it's coating it, and I'm sure that it's adding grip. That's the whole point of gesso, is to add grit to the page so that your paint has something to bind to and to protect the paper beneath it. But this is really thick still. Like, it's, to me, this is adding way too much texture. It's falling apart in crumbles. I'll show you what regular gesso looks like. Store-bought gesso looks like beside it. So the store-bought gesso is nice and smooth. It doesn't leave clumps. So here's the store-bought gesso beside it. Smooth, good coverage. So I gotta say, I'm not impressed with this recipe so far. The store-bought gesso is definitely way better. This feels like it's gonna just flake right off when it dries. In fact, let's dry it and see what happens. I feel like it's gonna fall off. Okay, so I've got it all dry now. And while it is very textured, and your paint would definitely stick to it, it's very crumbly. I feel like it's gonna fall off if you try to put paint onto it. And it's really textured. So if you're looking for a texture paste, this might work really well. But as a gesso, I'm thinking that this is a bust. So maybe if you want to try it, maybe you want to thin it out some more, see if that helps. For me, I couldn't get it to work properly, but it was worth a try. So you give it a try and let me know what you think. And thanks so much for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.